Hey, it's Mr. Bass, and if you watch me at all, you know that I am a true tackle junkie, a tackle addict. I love fishing tackle. I love talking about fishing tackle. I love doing podcasts about fishing tackle. I love everything there is about fishing tackle. And I heard a great one the other day. I was listening to an older podcast. It was an interview of Jay Kumar, who does a great website, the Bass Blaster website, and he has a newsletter as well. Great content. But what he did, I don't know if he did it himself or he did it with others, but he got access to and found out what the top 10 winningest lures of all time were on the professional fishing series or circuits. And it's something you can use. If the pros are winning with these lures, then you can catch fish with these lures as well. Now, one of the downsides to the most popular lures is that everybody starts fishing them, right? But what makes them great is the fact that they are tried and true and they work year after year after year. Now, before I go into the baits, I want to give you one caveat. This information does not include the last couple of years where forward-facing sonar has dominated professional fishing. So don't throw in the comments, well, what about the such and such finesse worm, that everybody's been crushing them out on using forward-facing sonar. What I think would be fun now, back at the end of 2023, the beginning of 2024, is to go back and try to determine what are the all-time winningest baits for forward-facing sonar. And I plan to do that in an upcoming video. But for now, this is pre-forward-facing sonar. Most of you guys watching my videos aren't using forward-facing sonar anyway. All these baits will work for you, and they're going to work great. One final thing before I get to the baits that I would love for you to do if you're so inclined. Pause this video real quick and go to the comments section and take your own guess of what the 10 baits are. Don't worry necessarily about the order, but go ahead and put in what you think the top 10 winningest lures of all time might be in the comments section. And then when the video's over, you can watch it and compare your answers. And I think it'd be really fun to go back into everybody's comments and see how many people got what baits right versus others. I think it would be really fun. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, number 10, the 10th most winning lure of all time in professional bass fishing tournaments, the Megabass Vision 110 jerkbait. That's right. And who can argue with the Megabass 110? Boy, this thing catches fish. It's pricey, though. So one of the things that I will tell you, if you don't want to pay top dollar for something like the Megabass Vision 110, there's a lot of alternative jerk baits out there that you can throw. And one thing to kind of keep in mind here is if you're wanting to duplicate these to have more success in the water, you don't always have to go with the exact brand. You could easily just say the top 10 or the number 10 bait of all time is a jerk bait. And that's probably accurate as well. Number 9, and this is a bait that really isn't nearly as popular as it used to be, but I guarantee it still works incredibly well. The War Eagle spinnerbait. Heck yes. I absolutely love War Eagle spinnerbaits. There's tons of models out there. There's tons of sizes and different blade combinations. But the bottom line is the 9th most winning lure on the pro circuit has been a spinnerbait, and specifically the War Eagle spinnerbait. So if you're not much of a spinnerbait fisherman, why not give it a try? And if you don't have many in your collection, go buy a couple of War Eagle spinnerbaits. You will not regret it. They're great spinnerbaits. They're fantastic, and they're reasonably priced compared with other spinnerbaits in the world. And if you're fishing competitively, A lot of your competitors won't be throwing this when it comes to moving baits. There's tons of other lures that have become more popular, but don't count out the spinnerbait. They flat out work. Number 8 really kind of surprised me, and it didn't surprise me because it doesn't work. I know it works. It was so incredibly hot a few years ago. Aaron Martens is the one that really put this thing on the map, and it is still a lights out fish catching lure that, again, it's not as sexy as it used to be. Not nearly as many people are throwing it. The smart guys are still throwing it. It flat out works. It crushes them. The Robo Worm. That's right. The hand-poured Robo Worm. 4 inches, 6 inches, 7 inches all work great. The fat worms work great. And some of these colors like Aaron's Morning Dawn, fabulous, fantastic. This might be the only color you need right here, Aaron's Morning Dawn. But here's another great one of Aaron Martin's colors, Aaron's Magic. And this Aaron's Magic actually has a little bit of, what do they call it, R&B flake. But either way, Aaron's Magic, Aaron's Morning Dawn, crushing it, killer. Here's the 7-inch. The 7-inch is really good for shaky head fishing. The 6 and the 4 I like to fish mostly drop shot. But, you know, you can Nico rig these things. I mean, Robo Worms are the real deal. Maybe you're not much of a drop shot fisherman this year, 2024 season. Maybe you want to start practicing with the drop shot. And, you know, a lot of guys are drop shotting flatworms, and there's a lot more sexy drop shot techniques out there now. But I still love the Robo Worm. And it's number 8 all time in professional winning tournaments. Number 7 of the top winningest baits of all time, the Kitech Swing Impact Fat. That's right, the fat, chunky Kitech swim bait. My favorite size is this one right here, the 3.8 inch. They come in tons and tons of colors. This one here is Sexy Shad. This here is Tennessee Shad. You kind of see the difference. This is actually one of my all-time favorite colors, Bluegill Flash. So many different sizes. This is the 4.8 inch size. And again, not as hot, not as sexy nowadays because there's been so many copycats. Every company under the sun has copied the Kitech and the fat Kitechs because they flat work. They are incredible fish catchers. You can put these on A-rigs. You can fish these as trailers on any kind of moving bait you can think of under the sun. Just put a ball head jig and swim it all by itself. These things crush it. And here's the thing to keep in mind. Some of these baits, like the Robo Worm, like the Kitech Swing Impact Fat, that aren't as sexy or aren't as popular, is really kind of good for the savvy fisherman in a lot of ways, because the reason some of these things start to get replaced, one is because they're so successful, but the other is because of fishing pressure. If everybody on the lake is throwing this particular swim bait, well, the fish are going to get used to it. But as the industry and the group changes direction and starts throwing the Largo Shad instead of the Kitech, the fish start getting used to the Largo Shad and forget about this. And then if you're the one throwing this a few years later, you could give yourself an advantage. So it's something to keep in mind. If a lure like this was super, super popular and absolutely crushing it, give it some time, throw it, you're going to catch fish with it. Number 6 is not going to surprise anybody because it is still, to this day, one of the absolute hottest baits on the planet. All the pros still throw it. All the kayak anglers throw it. The bank anglers throw it. Everybody under the sun throws this bait, and it still crushes it. It has slowed down a little bit because of pressure, but it's still crushing it. What bait is that, you say? The Z-Man Jackhammer Bladed Jig. The expensive chatterbait from Z-Man, and it's a killer. It just crushes it. White's a great color to throw. Bluegill colors are a great color to throw. This one here I think is called Bee Height Delight. An excellent one. Black and blue, if you're in dirty water, is another great one. The reality is the Jackhammer works. It crushes them. And again, one way that you know when a bait is fantastic is when every company under the sun is trying to copy it. And that's what's going on. Literally every company out there is copying it. Even Z-Man is copying it. They've come out with the new Evo. They've come out with the Mini Max. They've come out with the Cross Eyes. They have tried to come up with every different variety under the sun to continue to dominate and give them the most market share. But I still like the Jackhammer the best. We are halfway through the list of the top 10 winningest baits of all time. Number 5 also doesn't really surprise me. It still to this day is absolutely tremendous and needs to be in your tackle box. The Spro Bronze Eye Frog. Dean Rojas made this little bad boy famous. And so many other pros use this frog, fish with this frog. It's a killer frog. It's one of the very best frogs out there. If you're going to throw a hollow-bodied frog, the Spro Bronze Eye Frog is fantastic. And that popping frog also is just tremendous. And when it comes to topwater fishing, you know, the frog needs to be in your tackle box for sure. And if you don't have any frogs at all, why not try the one that all the pros throw? The Spro Bronze Eye Frog. Really, really good. Interesting that of these top 10 lures, 4 of them are soft plastic lures, and the rest are either hard baits or other types of baits like jigs, swim jigs, you know, those kind of things. Number 4 may be the most infamous or well-known soft plastic bait out there. And I guarantee you, if you made your own list ahead of time before you started playing this video, this absolutely was on your list. It's not a surprise to anybody because it still dominates. The Reaction Innovations Sweet Beaver. And of course, this 4.20 size is the prevalent size, or the one that has won the most money for sure. They make a lot of other sizes. Here's a double wide size. That bad boy is big, big, big. But the Sweet Beaver, just a superb flipping bait. And of course, you can use it as a jig trailer. You can free rig it. You can Tokyo rig it. You can fish this thing, put it as a jig trailer. It is so versatile. No wonder it is such a dominant bait on the circuit, the pro circuits. And again, these guys were the first, and everybody under the sun has copied them. Literally every plastic bait manufacturer out there makes some sort of a beaver knockoff because it's so good. The other thing too, I'd love to know, I think I already know this, but what's the number one technique that the pros use to catch fish? Flipping and pitching. Absolutely. That's the way they use it more than any other way out there. I'm very confident. I can say that very confidently. But this is a fantastic bait. Go get you some. Speaking of getting you some, I will have links in the description of all of these baits so that you can go out and try them yourself. And when you do that, you help the Mr. Bass channel, which I also greatly appreciate. All right, number 3 is the only one of all 10 categories where he refers to a specific brand, but he doesn't refer to the exact product. But I can put the product together. You could too. It's fairly easy to figure out. So this is going to be actually more than one product, but it's all going to be from the same company. So number 3, the third, meaning really high up on the list, the third most prominent, most winning bait of all time, Zoom worms. Zoom worms. So what do you think of when you think of Zoom worms and Zoom worms that actually win tournaments? What I think the number one worm most likely is, it's debatable, and you can let me know in the comments if you think I'm off, but I really think the number one Zoom worm for tournament wins has got to be the trick worm. The Zoom trick worm, especially in the spring. The Zoom trick worm is the spawning floating worm technique, shallow water fishing technique worm that just dominates. It doesn't matter what color you want to choose to fish with. The Zoom trick worm, it gets it done, boys and girls. I know for a fact that this trick worm has won tons of tournaments, and not just the plain old trick worm, but the fat trick worm called the Magnum trick worm. These two worms right here, they have won a lot of money in professional fishing. So that's going to be my choice of the number one Zoom worm. But there's some others that are just so close as well, and they've got so many products. I'm only going to talk about maybe 3 of them. All right, then when you get into the heat, summertime, or ledge fishing, deep water tactics, you got to have the Zoom Old Monster, right? Heck yeah. The Zoom Old Monster worm has won so many tournaments. It's just all the pros have it. They've all got one tied on. It's in their tackle box, whether they're sponsored by Zoom or not. They're throwing this bad boy, especially when the fishing gets tough in the summertime or those hot months. Okay, and then the third Zoom worm that I'm 100% confident has won so many tournaments out there, especially in the grass. The Ultra Vibe Speed Worm. Now this looks super fat because what I do is I take multiple packs, cram them all into one pack. So this is way more than a 15 pack. But the Ultra Vibe Speed Worm crushes it in the grass, and it works so many other places too. You go down to Florida, all the pros are going to be throwing this bad boy right here. It is a proven winner without a doubt. Those are my top 3 Zoom worms. Like I said, there's tons of them out there, but those are my choices. All right, we're down to the final 2 baits, number 2 and the grand champion number 1. What could they be? What could they be? This one kind of surprised me, and it's not necessarily. Once I thought about it, I was like, well, of course, you cannot have an all-time tournament-winning bait without including a jig. Without question, the jig has won so many pro tournaments. And one of the reasons the jig is so popular and does so well is because jigs catch big fish. And until the MLF, every fish count style came about, all professional tournaments were always about the 5 biggest fish or the 7 biggest fish way back in the old days. And so what better way to catch a big fish than using a jig, flipping a jig. And of course, the Hack Attack jig has caught tons of fish. The Denny Brower structure jig has absolutely crushed them. And again, Strike King makes tons of different jigs. I'm not going to go through all of their jigs, but in my mind, something like the structure jig or the Hack Attack flipping jig, those are going to be the ones that dominate those big fish tournaments. But they also have other jigs that have done incredibly well, like the Bitsy Bug, that little tiny jig. Now, I don't know if the Bassmaster and the BPT pros are throwing Bitsy Bugs because they're generally not going to catch you the biggest. But man, I'll tell you what, that Bitsy Bug catches numbers like you wouldn't believe. It really, really does. So I was excited to see that the jig made the top 10 list, and it's actually number 2. Here's the old Pro Model jig by Strike King. Strike King has dominated, and I really think it's because they've had really, really big names like KVD, Denny Brower, Greg Hackney, the guys that are known for winning big tournaments and winning with a jig. Wow, how about that? How about that? So, what's number 1? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What could it possibly be? You got to be thinking to yourself, well, man, I can think of all kinds of baits that are really, really good. Where are they? Why are they not on the list? Or why have I not seen them? So, what could it be? Again, this is another interesting one because they don't list an exact bait. They just go with a brand and a general overall type of lure. So again, I'm not going to be able to show you a lot of those, but I can show you as they broke it down what some of the very best ones were. Drum roll, please. The number 1 all-time winningest lure on the pro fishing circuits. Bam! The crankbait, and more particularly, they said Strike King crankbaits. And again, when I think about it, it's got to be because of KVD. KVD has won so many tournaments throwing Strike King crankbaits. And there's a ton of other pros that have won tons and tons of tournaments, pro-level tournaments, throwing Strike King crankbaits. A couple of them that they mentioned that were really big, the 6XD, this very crankbait pattern color, the Barfish, KVD won on Toledo Bend, and he probably won a lot of other tournaments with it as well. But the 6XD, the 10XD, fishing those deep ledges, the 5XD, all of those. And then when you go to square bills, the number 1 square bill was the KVD 1.5. This is a 2.5, just a little bigger to show you. I've got a 1.5 right here. There's a 1.5. Dominant. And if you really wanted to expand that more and say, well, hey, a lipless qualifies as a crankbait too, although I don't think they were really thinking about lipless. But there's no question that this red eye shad from Strike King also has won a ton of money on the pro circuit, all tournaments. The red eye shad really, really dominates as well. So Strike King crankbaits, and when you think about it, crankbaits have to be in there, and it just so happens that if you want to win big in tournaments, you probably ought to be throwing a crankbait. And there's so many moving bait alternatives out there that have gotten people away from crankbaits, like the chatterbait. You may want to rethink that and start tying on crankbaits if you really want to be competitive. So that's it. The top 10 winningest baits of all time. What are you surprised about? Is there anything on that list that you think, how could that be? It shouldn't be on there? Or is there anything on that list that you say, wait a minute, where's the Senko? Right? That's the very first thing that came to my mind is where's that 5-inch stick bait? And the more I dug into this and thought about it, guess what? The Senko has won a ton of money, but it's usually not the winning bait. It's usually a supplement lure that helps a guy. Maybe he's throwing crankbaits. It's his primary bait. And then to kind of fill out his limit, he starts throwing that Senko. There's very few tournaments where a guy says, I was throwing a Senko all day long. I did it all 4 days of the tournament. It won me. What they usually say is that Senko was an awesome filler bait that got me bites when the bite got tough. So that's my guess why the Senko did not make the top 10 list. Now, keep in mind, I don't have access to the data. I'm just taking Jay's word for it, but I'm confident Jay did his homework. Jay has spent a lot of time. He used to have that website called Bass Gold or whatever, where he had all kinds of tournament data. I used to use it. It doesn't exist anymore to my knowledge, but man, the guy is not a slouch. He's not a slough. He went and compiled all the data, and those are the top 10 baits as of a couple of years ago. Now we're at the beginning of 2024. And as I said, with forward-facing sonar, that's going to change, right? It's already changed. We've already seen it drastically the last couple of years. So I'd like to do this. I'd love to be able to compile the data for 2023 and figure out what were the top 10 most winning baits on all those tournaments. I don't think I got the ability to do it, but maybe with AI I could figure it out. Let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear what you think in the comments. Please share this video with your buddies. It would greatly, greatly help the channel. Smash the like button. And how about a subscribe? I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, this is Mr. Bass. Happy fishing!